Well, Brian, it is a Monday night, and sometimes we'll talk about the college football playoffs coming up. Sometimes we'll, dive more into the film. Tonight, we've got a recruit to talk about and a commitment that, kind of came not out of nowhere, but at the same time, it was a situation where we're getting ready to do this show, and it's like, hey, we get something extra to talk about tonight. And Notre Dame received a commitment from 2025 running back Nolan James. He was a Boston College commit, so he has flipped over to Notre Dame. He was on campus this weekend for Florida State. Now, obviously, that went pretty darn well for Notre Dame, and it was enough for Nolan James to pull the trigger, and he is now a member of the 2025 class, Brian. So let's break this thing down. Let's, kind of talk about how this all went down. We'll get the backstory, and then we'll talk about, his fit in the class, and then what's next. And that's kind of how we always do the story.
I'm actually tweeting this out right now, so telling people to come join us. So
there you go.
Telling people we're breaking it down right now. So look, a little backstory here, Vince. Obviously, Notre Dame had two running backs committed in the class. They had two kids that they committed, got very early, and and Justin Thurman and Daniel Anderson had been committed for a while. The process with Daniel Anderson, I'll just quickly go over it. We talked about it before. Notre Dame had taken a very early commitment from him. They had told him over the summer that they were going to kind of reevaluate him and needed to see what he did his senior year. And eventually told him he didn't have a spot in the class. I've made my feelings known on that. I love that kid. He handled it with such grace and class, but I don't like it. I don't like you offered the kid. You're the one that got his commitment early.
And you said it was okay for him to commit.
And I said at the time, it was too early. It was way too early to take that kid. You could have flipped him later in the process. It's not his fault that you didn't make a great evaluation. That's not on the kid. But that's the situation. But they still wanted a second back in the class. There was a couple guys they kind of targeted early, few guys they targeted early, trying to figure out who was the right fit. And they kind of settled in on pretty quickly Nolan James. And this is a kid, Vince, that I liked a lot. I had a friend of mine when Daniel Anderson decommitted said, hey, you got to watch this Nolan James kid. I hadn't really seen him a whole lot, to be honest with you, Vince. Watched this film, and I was like, I absolutely love this kid. Just fell in love with him, watched some film of him, and said, boy, this is the kind of running back I love. I'm a Denver Bronco fan, right? From back in the 90s. I'm that one-cut slasher that, Terrell Davis. And, and this kid fits that very well. He's got we'll talk about him as a player, but, they kind of keyed in on him. And I also think that they're talking to some sources. He's got kind of the mentality that Dylan McCullough loves. Looks at the depth chart and says, hey, I just want to know that I'm going to get a chance to compete. That's all I care about. And they're like, of course you are. And then, and he said, as long as you're recruiting me because you think I can play for you, not just to fill a roster spot, I'm interested. This is essentially kind of how the conversation went. And so, because he's a big time into academics, that's why he committed to BC over some other schools, because he's a big time high academic kid.
I love that.
And absolutely. But so Notre Dame kind of said, okay, let's zero in on him, and got him on campus this weekend. And that was what the conversation was like. He had I was told he asked a lot of tough questions, really trying to get because he knows this is a quick process for him. So he has to ask all the questions that take 6 months to ask during a courtship from both sides. This kid and Notre Dame had to kind of get out of each other in 2 weeks. And so he was you got into some of those conversations. He asked some tough questions. They had great conversations with him. I was told by some people that were around him a lot and around his family a lot, that he connected really quickly with the Notre Dame commits in the class. The parents you could just kind of salt of the earth type of people, but smart, asking the right questions, that kind of thing. And it just was a natural fit. And as long as Notre Dame could convince him, hey, we see you as a guy that we're coming here to compete and have a role, not just a guy that says, okay, we need 5 scholarship backs, and over the next couple of years, we want to make sure we've got our 5, and so you're going to help us get our 5. We'll have 6 next year, but it wasn't that. It was, dude, we think you can play.
Yeah.
And the way that Notre Dame uses their running backs with Aeneas Williams, hey, why couldn't you have the Aeneas Williams role in a couple of years when Aeneas is maybe a starter, or he's the Jadarian Price to the Kedron Young being the Jeremiah Love, or Kedron's Jadarian Price to Aeneas's Jeremiah Love kind of thing. And so once that was sold, it was over. And once he was able to, they were able to convince him, like, hey, man, we dig you. We think you can play. I'm not wasting my time this late in the process on just a roster filler, then he was on board, and that's how they were able to make it happen.
Love that. Love that. So how does he fit in with this class? And I mean, you mentioned the fact that he's the second back and all of that.
Well, he's the second back, but he's graded as my number one back in the class right now. I grade him higher than Justin.
The second back in the class, but not the second ranked back in the class. Yep. Okay, gotcha.
He's the second back to commit, but he grades out higher. Justin Thurman's sort of that big play potential guy, the slasher. This kid is an every down back, in my opinion. I mean, this is a kid, Vince, that's got over 3,000 career rushing yards and over 1,000 career receiving yards. Because he actually played a little receiver. He played running back and receiver as a sophomore and had over 500 receiving yards as a sophomore. I think he fits the offense great, Vince. And when you look at how he fits into the class, he meets your numbers need. You wanted 2 backs.
Right.
He meets that need. You wanted at least 1 back that can kind of – and that's part of the issue that they had with Daniel Anderson is, like, the Notre Dame staff loved that kid, loved Daniel Anderson as a young man. They did – and I can assure you this, it was not easy telling that kid he couldn't come because he did everything right, and they loved him as a kid. But as a football player, he just didn't progress, and the injuries just kind of really sapped the kind of player they thought he could be. I mean, he was a kid that ran a 4.5 flat at the combine before his junior year, but he had multiple lower body injuries, and he just never got that juice back.
Gotcha.
And so they didn't have an every down type of back in the class. Justin Thurman's not an every down type of back right now. And so they wanted one, and that's part of the reason they like Nolan James, because he's a workload guy. He doesn't look like it. He doesn't look real big, but he's about 5'11", 195, 200. He's got a really unique frame, which I'll talk about when we break his game down, Vince. But he's got that workhorse type of body. He's gonna be somewhat built similar to what Jadarian Price is. Okay. He's more muscular than he is thick. You know what I mean? But he's strong. He's built. Got a lot of armor on him. Yep. He's that kind of back that fits that every down back. But he also is an impact pass catcher, Vince, and that's an important piece of this conversation, and something that Notre Dame is looking for is they want that type of player. We've talked about this. They don't just want a guy that is a runner. I mean, if he is, that's great. But like this year, for example, he's got 22 catches. So on the season, he's got 1,399 rushing yards and 14 touchdowns in 9 games. And he's had some big games against some good teams. He had 174 yards on 35 carries against Good Counsel out of Maryland, where Cam Hart, Sam Mustipher, guys like that played at. So big-time program. He had 209 yards on 21 carries against Paramus Catholic. They played Del Barton, lost 52-51. Their only loss of the year so far. He had 29 carries for 157 yards. He had 21 carries for 249 yards against Seton Hall Prep. So this is a kid that's got some workhorse in him. You know what I mean, Vince? And he's not just he's not a scat back. He can be an every down back, even though he's not a real like big guy, just kind of like Jadarian. You know what I mean? And so, and last year he had 26 carries in the playoff, 26 carries for 218 yards against St. Thomas Aquinas, 23 for 114 against Pope John, 28 for 228 against Paramus Catholic, 26 for 137 against Seton Hall Prep, 18 for 111 against Bishop McDevitt and PA. You see what I'm saying? So, I mean, there's a lot of workhorse in this kid, Vince, but he's not just a runner. And that's my whole point that I'm making to you. Like, this is a kid that has rushed for over the last 2 years, and he still has games left. Their season's not over yet. They've got a playoff game coming this weekend. He's got 2,800 rushing yards and 22 touchdowns the last 2 years, and he had 625 yards as a sophomore. So he's got over 3,600 yards. But he also has 1,084 receiving yards on 95 catches. As a sophomore, He had over 600 rushing yards, over 500 receiving yards. The last 2 years, as he's been more of a primary back, he still has caught 45 passes for 400 and about, if I'm doing the math correctly, Vince, it's about 458 yards and 3 touchdowns. And he's got experience in pass pro as well. So he is truly that all-around type of back that Notre Dame likes. And the reason they like that is because, like, Aeneas Williams is sort of their niche runner now, but that's not all he can do. That's just his role for now. You know what I mean? Jadarian Price is sort of that off-the-bench explosive. You can do a lot with 7 carries. You know, you can get to almost 100 on 5, 6, 7 carries.
Right.
But that's not all he can do. That's just his role right now. And that's how Nolan is. He's a kid who could have more sort of maybe a third down role. He could be Devin Ford. He could be Aeneas Williams early in his career, but he also has the ability to be a every down back also. And that's what Coach McCullough likes. He likes guys that have niche ability, but he wants a niche ability within overall strong all-around game.
Yeah.
And Nolan fits that. And as far as what Coach McCullough looks for. I'll just say this. There were other more highly ranked backs on the board that had some interest, but this is the kid Dylan McCullough wanted.
Well, that's all I need to hear. I mean, I'm being serious.
A lot of people should need to hear, yes.
If Mike Mickens tells me that there's other recruits out there that are rated higher, but this is the guy that he wants, yep, okay, I'm going with the guy that Mike Mickens wants. If Dylan McCullough tells me that this is the guy that he wants, then I'm on board. Like that's really all I needed to hear from those two guys in particular. And that sells me as much as what you just said sold me. Yep. That sells me.
I grade him as a 4-star recruit, Vince, myself. As also. So, and like I said, I actually liked this kid before I knew Notre Dame was on him. And I've got a couple texts. I sent a couple. I'll put it like this. I very rarely reach out to anyone at Notre Dame about recruits. Maybe once a year. You know me. I was like, that's just not my job. It's not my role.
Because you haven't done it for my kid.
I actually said, hey, are you guys recruiting this kid?
Yeah.
Like, I'm watching this kid's film. Are you? And the answer was, they were.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Right.
Like that's how much I like this kid on film.
Yeah.
Before I even knew they were going after him. This kid can play.
Awesome.
This kid
That's
can play.
Fantastic.
And he's the kind of kid, he won't be like that he's not Jeremiah Love.
Right.
Where it's like, oh my gosh, elite. I mean, he's just that kid you're like, dude, he had 22 carries for 118 yards and 4 catches for 37 yards. And and you're just like, wow, what a day.
Yeah.
What a day. You know, but it won't be like, oh my gosh, did you see the move he made? The backwards reverse jump over a guy like Saquon Barkley.
Well, that's a pretty you know what I mean?
Like he won't do the things that Jeremiah. I mean, he's not that type of back. You just look down at him. He's more Kyron than he is Jeremiah.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Well, those are two completely different kinds of backs.
Exactly. He's more of that type of back where it won't always be sexy, but you just look down and you're like, oh, he got 100 yards today. Right. Where like when Jeremiah can have a game, you're like, oh, he was great. And then you're like, oh, he only rushed for 91 yards. It felt like more.
Yeah.
And then Kyron would run for 120. You're like, he ran for 120 yards because it just wasn't flashy or sexy all the time, but it just was productive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how Nolan James is, in my opinion.
Yeah, I get that for sure. So one thing we'd like to do whenever there's a commitment to Notre Dame, we like to talk about what's next. And so, Bryan, what's next? Because this was the big recruiting weekend, obviously, on campus, and what's next?
I wanted to break his game down a little bit specifically first. We won't do a film breakdown, but I just wanted to kind of get a little bit into this particulars too, Vince, of what I like about him.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
And then I'll just transition into the what's next, and we'll just wrap up. Okay.
Perfect.
But because I know it's confusing because I was kind of talking about his skill set a little bit, so I get it. It's on me.
Good.
Couple things about him. Number one, like the frame. I talked about that earlier, but here's a unique thing about him, Vince. You got to look at the pictures of this kid. He's got a really long torso.
Okay.
And so his legs are shorter than what a normal 5'11" kid would look like. It just I'll send you a couple pictures of him, and you can see him, and you can see it when you watch film of him too. He's got shorter legs. The thing about that is that makes him harder to tackle because he's strong upper body, and he's built low. He's not short, but he's built low. So if you're going to go down on his legs, it's a little lower than what normally. Like he doesn't look abnormal, right? Like he doesn't look like an Oompa Loompa, but he's just built differently, which makes him a little bit harder to tackle. And you can see that power on film, and it also helps him with his back. He's a very balanced kid. Where like Jeremiah Love's like all legs, right? He's got those really high hips. He's just, you know what I mean? Like he's just. Josh Adams was definitely that way. This kid's kind of the opposite of that.
Okay, gotcha.
And real strong kid, just not like. Audric looking strong, but more like Jadarian and Jeremiah, just real wiry, real strong, built well, athletic kid, great contact balance, Vince, great agility, can make those, you want running backs to be able to make that quick cut and then immediately accelerate. You want backs that can kind of get hit, bounce off of it, hit the ground, and boom, just keep on going. That requires balance. He's got that that's what contact balance is. You know what I mean? Can you get hit and stay balanced, not lose, where you need 3 steps to kind of gather yourself? Can you make a cut and immediately accelerate out of it? He does that.
Right.
He's not a burner, but he's fast enough where if you give him a hole, he's going to go for a big game. You know, like he's in between Audric and Jadarian. He doesn't have Audric's speed. You know, he's faster than that, but he's not Jadarian and Jeremiah either. He's kind of in between those two, which backs like that, you give them a crease, they're going to rip off long run. I mean, Audric Estime ran 4.7, and he had an 80-yard touchdown run against NC State. He had a 70-yard touchdown run called back. Like he had no problem ripping off long runs. Same thing with Kyron Williams, who ran like a 4.7. He had no problem ripping off, 40, 50-yard touchdown runs, and against Carolina, a 90-plus yard touchdown run, right? 4.55, 4.6 is still pretty fast, especially when you get in space. So he's got some of that big play, but he's not he's not Jadarian and Jeremiah, right? He's not. That's why I say he's more Kyron, which also makes him a better complement to kind of what they have a little bit, Vince. But I like that about him. Strong kid, catches the ball well. Good second level anticipation. I mean, you can just see it as soon as what that basically is he's on his track. He can see that linebacker start to go, and he knows I got the cut back, and he'll stay on his track and then boom, hit it. Oh, just he's really good in that. Real high football IQ guy, Vince. You can see it. He's smart. He's a smart football player, but he's tough and he's athletic. The only thing that keeps him from being a higher ranked kid, in my opinion, he's not quite as big as I'd ideally like, and he's not that burner type of guy. That's really what keeps him from being a top 100 to 120 guy for me, is that, but he's a really good football player. And so that's why he grades out as like a top 150-ish to 175-ish type of player for me.
Okay.
It's like Jadarian was a top 100 guy coming out of high school. Keidron was a top 100 guy because Keidron was a monster, right?
Yes, right. Physically, yeah.
Yes, and Keidron's probably a touch faster than this kid, at least out of high school. Like he was a top 100 guy. Jeremiah was a top 50 guy. Aeneas and Nolan James are more top 150 to 175 guys because they don't have that elite skill set, that elite size, but just really good football players. And that's how Nolan, that's what I like about him. So somebody asked, is he Audric fast? That's what I was saying earlier. He's faster than Audric. He's just not as fast as the guys they have now. He's kind of in between those two. Good route runner too, Vince. He's not like his pass catching is not just check downs and swings and stuff like that. He can actually run routes and tracks the ball down the field. So yeah, there's a lot to like about his game.
Love it.
It has the mental intangibles, and he's the skill set is there. I know you've watched this film, and you and I will talk about it later. But somebody asked, is he a better version of Jabron Payne? That's not a bad comp. That's not a bad comp at all. There's some similarities. I think Kyron's probably a faster version of Kyron. Maybe not quite as shifty as Kyron was, but similar. But that's not a bad comp at all. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one, Josh. I like that one. Yeah.
Are they going? I mean, without looking at the roster, are they going to have 8 scholarship backs next year if nobody transfers out or leaves?
No. So you'll have Jeremiah, Jadarian, Jabron, the two current freshmen, and then the two, because Devin Ford's out of eligibility.
Devin Ford will be done.
Yeah, he's out of eligibility. Out of eligibility.
Yep.
So
is that the? I mean, that seems like a lot. Is that the number that they want to be at?
Yes, because you can be over next year. They can be up to 105 next year on scholarship, so that helps them a little bit. But the thinking for Notre Dame is there's very little chance you're going to have Jeremiah and Jadarian and Jabron on the roster and by the time you get to 2026.
Well, yeah.
Next year's your last year with 3 of those 7 guys.
Right, and then you might see
it. And you have to protect yourself in case somebody transfers.
Oh, yeah, or injury.
Or hasn't it exactly?
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Like, what if you'd have got Keidron Young last year? Said, "No, we're good with just one running back." And then I know Nina's committed first, but I'm making a point. And say, we don't need a second back because we've got Jeremiah, we've got Jadarian, we've got Devin Ford, we've got Jabron Payne. So we just need one back. And then all of a sudden, you don't have that second back, and Jabron Payne gets hurt. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where it's at. It's kind of where it fits. So as far as what's next, Vince, I mean, obviously now Notre Dame has been recruiting 2026 running backs for a while. They have their list. They have guys they like. It's just keep doing what you're doing. This is just a circumstance where they kind of were done, but they had their eye on some other guys because they weren't sure what was going to happen with Daniel. Once they realized that Daniel just hadn't gotten, I mean, he wasn't starting for his high school team. Once he just hadn't gotten that juice back. He just had never truly recovered from all the injuries. Then it was like, okay, now we need to make a move. But Coach McCullough and Coach Boat or Chad have been, and the recruiting staff have been working on 26 running backs for a while. So this isn't like, gee, we've had to put all of our efforts into, like kind of like a receiver. Part of the reason they're not as far along with some 26 receivers is because they've had to put so much effort into finishing off the 25 class. Running backs not that way. They've been working on 26 running backs for a while. So now it's just turned to there. And now that can be more targeted. Maybe only one, maybe two, depending on, kind of what happens the next couple of years with Jeremiah and Jadarian. They may both be in the NFL in 2026. You may be looking at a little bit of a different situation. So at least one for next year, still maybe two. Just depends on how the roster shakes out. But as of right now, they're big game hunting in the 2026 class at running back.
Love that. Love it. Any other points you want to make about Nolan James?
It's just another good pickup. Like, look, one thing we've seen from this staff is there are certain coaches that should get the benefit of the doubt because of their track record. Mike Mickens is one, and so's Dylan McCullough. And I'm giving you guys my opinion. I think this is a 4-star kid. I think this is a top 150-ish caliber guy. I love this kid on film. And he produces, Vince, in a great league. I mean, he's playing against D1 kids every week at DePaul Catholic. He's a teammate. Oh, I forgot to mention this. He's a teammate of Elijah Burris. I forgot to mention that earlier. They have 6 or 7 kids going D1. They have a kid or two committed to Ohio State. Elijah's committed, obviously, to Notre Dame. This is a really good league. Rashawn Gary is from that league. If you guys remember, Rashawn Gary obviously played at Michigan. Like, this is they play St. Peter's Prep, where Justin Adamiola came from, Brandon Wimbush came from, Shane Simon came from. They play Good Counsel this year, which is where Sam Mustapher and Cam Hart came from. Like, this kid's playing big-time football, and he's producing the way that I just pointed out that he's producing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so productive back, talented back, fits the system. I don't care what the stars say. I don't care. This kid can play football. The stars also didn't think Kyron Williams. I didn't think Kyron Williams was going to be what he was. So I'm not even saying that they're bums for that. I didn't see it.
Right.
They didn't think Logan Diggs could play. Audric Estime wasn't ranked very high by anyone other than rivals. Jadarian Price wasn't graded out as a top 100 back. I mean, guys, these kids can play. And if Dylan McCullough says, hey, this kid can ball, I'm going to give the kid the benefit of the doubt. It just so happens in this case, I don't have to give the kid the benefit of the doubt because I already loved him. So in this instance, we're on the same page.
Yeah.
But, in other times you're just like, okay, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt because your track record speaks for itself. And not just at Notre Dame. I'm talking about at USC, at Indiana, in the NFL, you know what I mean, Vince? Like, guy's got a Super Bowl ring.
Right.
You know what I mean? He's produced Indiana's never been good at football. No, they really haven't. But I do know that there was a time when Dylan McCullough was popping out 1,000-yard rushing backs every year at Indiana. Guy can coach.
You only do so much. I mean,
yeah.
It does take a whole team.
Yep.
So, or 31 transfers, depending on how you want to look at it. All right. So that's going to do it for our discussion on Nolan James committing to the University of Notre Dame in the 25 class. He is a decommit from Boston College, and he is now in Notre Dame's class.
He never technically decommitted.
That's a good point. That is a good point. Yeah, no, fair point.
He did tell the Boston College staff he never publicly decommitted.
Gotcha.
Here's something else I want to say about this. Nolan told us before the visit he was going to make a decision quickly because he didn't want to string out the coaching staffs, and he wanted whoever he didn't commit to, he didn't play for, to have time to do whatever they needed to do. That's the kind of kid he is.
I like that a lot.
Like, look, I'm not going to commit if I'm not ready, but I'd like to do something soon. Either I'm going to stay with BC or I'm going to flip to Notre Dame. I'm going to make a decision quickly because I want to make sure BC has time to go out and find my replacement. Or if I'm not going to flip to Notre Dame, they're going to need that time to go find a second running back in the class.
They know it, and they can drop me and start working on other things. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So that alone was like, you know what? I like this kid.
Yeah.
I like this kid. So it just speaks a little bit to him. And also, I have this shouldn't come as a surprise to people on the board. I mean, I kind of, we don't steal kids' moments. You guys know that. But I dropped a pretty big hint about Notre Dame doing a great job with with this recruitment. You can find that on the board. It was an intel piece that I popped out this morning. Or actually, it was about 3 o'clock in the morning is when I finally got done doing that.
Technically in the morning.
Yeah. Yep. So I said there's still some closing to do, but Notre Dame moved the needle big time with James. Right now, the Irish are the favorites to eventually land James when it's all said and done. Now, originally, I was actually told it would be sort of midweek, but he sped it up because he just knew. So why drag it out 2 more days? This is what I want to do.
Love it.
And so that's why it happened when it happened. But there's a big intel piece. I have updates on Antoine Parham. I have a very interesting update on Derek Meadows and Jalen Wiggins in my intel piece as well. Also have an update on Madden Faramo. And I'll be adding an Andrew Olesh update here either later tonight or tomorrow. So that's for premium members only.
That's the only way you're going to get it.
All of our recruiting news goes nowadays. So you're going to have to check that out over there.
Right down there, Boards.Irish Breakdown.
That's right.
Yep, boards.irishbreakdown.com is the only place you're going to get that kind of info. And if you were over there, you probably knew that this was coming at some point.
Yeah, you felt good about it.
Yeah, or at least, yeah, exactly. Feel good about it. So you're only going to find it boards.irishbreakdown.com. So that's going to do it for this edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us. A little Irish Breakdown after dark. I love it.
It's always fun.
I know, right? For our Upon Further review. We've only got a few more of these left. Hopefully we've got, let's see, 3.
Hopefully we got 7 more left.
7. Vince. Yeah, I had to count it out.
7 more left. You shut your dirty mouth. We have a lot of these left, baby. At least 7.
We got 3 regular season ones left. That we know.
I love how Marcus Freeman said that. We're only guaranteed 1 more regular season game at home. Did you hear him say that?
I love it.
Like, good catch, coach. Good catch. Yes.
Yep. Well, and he's right. You're only guaranteed 12 total, and you only got 1 more at home. So
hey, and I met a lot of you this weekend at the tailgate. I had so much fun. You all are such a blessing to me. All the people that asked about how my wife is doing and how we're doing. Man, y'all are just an amazing community. I'm very blessed by you. Just wanted to thank you guys publicly. I put something on. I was going to put something on the board. I just wanted to say it publicly. I wanted this community to be different, and it's beyond my wildest dreams what it has become, and the type of community we are, and the care we show for each other, and it just really meant a lot. And it was great seeing so many. Vince, we had a lot of new people that had never been to tailgates before. Our dude, Just Your Ordinary Joe was there, so obviously rocking the IB gear. But a lot of new faces. Got to see John and Katie Keevers were both there.
Nice.
So they were both there. No kids. So Katie, I didn't recognize Katie at first, but got a chance. A lot of different people were there, Vince. It was great. And I just want to thank all of you. The compassion and concern you guys showed for what we're going through just meant the world to me. It really did. And when you go through something and you find out you're not alone, other people have gone through it, that's encouraging. But when you find out, boy, there's a lot of people that care.
Yeah, that
are thinking about you and praying for you, it helps. And so I haven't put it out publicly. What we're going through is on the board, and those of you that know what's going on. But I just wanted to say this in the show because so many of you listen. But I was just so incredibly grateful and thankful for the love and compassion you all have showed to me and my family over the last week. So thank you guys very much. Meant the world to me.
Can't top that. So we are going to sign off. Make sure you guys hang out with us all week long as we prepare for Notre Dame's final home game against Virginia. We'll have a show tomorrow afternoon, then, of course, tomorrow evening, and then tomorrow evening again because we've got the college football playoff ranking reaction show as well. So there'll be 3 shows tomorrow. So you got to make sure you hang out. It's going to be a little bit later because I believe the college football playoff ranking show is at 8:30. And so we will come on pretty much right after that, give or take about 9 o'clock.
Vince, you and I will talk. We may actually do the live show together tomorrow because the CFB Nation guys are not.
Oh,
so we may actually. Gotcha. I was going to talk to you about that. So we'll discuss that. Since it is later, I didn't want to wait till it was over. I figured we could just maybe go do a live breakdown of it and then dive right into the Perfect. So that's my plan, but I needed to get with you first. But
you might as well plan it. I'm cool with it. The earlier we start, the better it is for me and my beauty sleep.
You're an old guy, man. You I'm putting up intel pieces at 3:30, and Vince is like a couple hours away from getting up at that point in time. So it's like I'm putting intel pieces as Vince is waking up for his day. You know what I mean? So and I'm going to bed. We have very different schedules. Very different schedules.
That's so right. So yeah, make sure you hang out with us tomorrow. Again, 3 shows tomorrow. Lots of fun football stuff to talk about. And guys, we this is the best time of the year. Okay, so we've got all kinds of great football games coming up that we're going to talk about as well. And of course, Notre Dame's final home game against Virginia. So make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell, share with your family and friends, and of course, jump on the boards.irishbreakdown.com. And we will talk to you multiple times tomorrow on the next edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast. Have a great night, everybody.